I assume that the presentation that was shared by Shirakov and Kalpakov, which I assume was delivered earlier today, asked this question about potential measures that would help us increase carbon sequestration by 2050. So I had my ideas and my criticisms for some of the forecasts. I actually think that the baseline is GBIS. Actually, the same mistake was made in the low carbon development strategy recently released by the Ministry of Economic Development. What I mean is that they actually predicted linear growth of emissions in line with the development of GDP, which is weird. I mean, we do understand that these two lines cannot, will not change in parallel until 2050. Because before 2050, we are expecting energy efficiency projects and technological upgrade, and it all should be part of the baseline scenario. Simply because we cannot continue running the same inefficient and dirty equipment for 30 more years. So I don't think it is proper that the baseline is going through the sky there. Now, the Ministry of Economic Development last year did the same. They predicted economic growth of 3% per annum. I mean, in 2017, doing that was okay. Doing it in 2021 after pandemic is a bit too optimistic. So I think that we should actually review the numbers here for 2018, 2020. I don't think we were there at 3% in any case. And actually change your forecast going forward as well. Let me stress here that the study you have conducted is a very well-intended kind of research. It's such a shame we don't have enough of these studies in Russia. Very little attention is indeed paid to how much we can and how much we should reduce emissions. Maybe you have it in your report. I'm sorry if it is a misplaced criticism. I would certainly welcome a study that would also look at the side effects, economic and social side effects of climate adaptation and mitigation projects.
Это безусловный плюс. Но то, что задевает глаз, это то, что заложено сразу.
What also catches my attention here is that you are factoring in some reduction of manufacturing volume and it feels like you're actually being inspired here by the actual reduction of manufacturing in other countries, where in order to reduce emissions, they actually have to scale their production down. But Russia still has, low-hanging fruits, such as technological improvement. If I remember the numbers correctly, 1.2 billion tons of CO2 equivalent is what we can get simply simply by applying state-of-the-art technologies across the board. I mean, if we do this alone, the whole country will not need any other mitigation measures. And we can still do them, but they won't really be required that much. So, for example, we wouldn't have to do anything about cattle raising or poor forestry practices and so on. Now I'm looking at your predictions for animal husbandry, and I find it surprising because the numbers are telling me that you're not going to exterminate animal husbandry in the Russian Federation. You're actually going to destroy 130% of it, which is making little sense to me. Now, I'm wondering how much more land needs to be tilled in order to grow enough plant proteins, in order to grow enough plant nutrients to compensate for total lack of meat. Also, we have smart agriculture. And you must have noticed that smart agriculture is not about becoming small. And it is not about replacing meat with beans. It is about localizing it all, making sure the whole production chain is vertically integrated within the same farm, which makes a lot of sense and should certainly be promoted, don't get me wrong here. Now, accumulation of carbon in soil must have been mentioned already. And I actually believe we tend to focus a bit too much on cattle. And actually, for a change, note what's happening to loss in terms of loss of earth humus. I mean, if we address the problem of the negative balance or imbalances of CO2 in earth humus, this will already get us pretty far. And if we make sure that soil starts accumulating carbon, which I guess is happening in some European countries, this will give us even more. Now, as regards scenario forecast for LULUCF, I understand that forecasts may be confusing, but actually they do not conflict with each other. The numbers are the same. Underlying numbers, I mean, it's just that, what differs between those pathways, that some measures are taken into account, others are not. I understand that Zamolodchik of steam only accounts for a change in the age structure of the forest, which, change in age structure and biomass. And they also have some scenarios for expanding cuttings year by year. And the latest biennial reports from the Russian Federation did provide for some mitigation measures. So I think that this latest report actually called for reforestation and different measures to compensate for forest losses due to fires and predatory cutting. So I think they actually took a different scenario into account.
Прогнозом ИГКЕ это уже есть меры по сокращению выбросов в лесном секторе, которые тоже можно было бы учесть.
And if you analyze Zamolodchik ideas and compare them to IGCL ideas, this will already spell out for you a bunch of measures that should be implemented pretty easily.
Специфику и особенности наших секторов экономики. Я думаю, что работа будет интересная. И
I
если бы
think
мы...
it can be a very interesting study,
Это мое пожелание. Вот эти вот экономические мультипликативные эффекты,
particularly if we calculate the multiplier effects, like the ones I've described previously.
и вот что мы получаем.
That, for example, if we manage to increase carbon accumulation in the soil by such and such amount, this will give us such and such benefits directly and such benefits indirectly. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much for being very friendly and very critical at the same time. This is obviously the kind of input and feedback that modelers always need. Now, as regards your wish for such calculations, we would certainly love to get from experts in the agricultural industry, more specific guidance on how to calculate this direct and indirect benefits. I understand that on the 27th of March, there is a conference planned where we're going to discuss it. As regards macroeconomic impacts, we are doing some calculations like this, though I wish we published more. And cross-industrial collaboration should happen more here. It's particularly true for the forestry sector. It has been isolated due to pretty obvious reasons. But obviously, this part of the economy is very closely intertwined with lots of other industries, such as pulp and paper, forestry science, and many others. So obviously, such cross-industrial calculations need to be performed as well.